Hello, saints and scholars. Let's look at the latter prophets to find redemption in judgment. When you read through the latter prophets, it can be kind of tough to get through. Whole lot of judging and smiting and sin, and it's kind of a lot. Yet within the latter prophets, we see that even the symbols of destruction and judgment become stories of God's redemptive purpose. There are fascinating elements within many of the latter prophets which show God is going to redeem his people. God is going to bring about salvation unto his people. Let's look at a couple of famous examples. Today we're going to look at several examples of God using instruments of judgment to tell a story of redemption. We'll see this in Isaiah at the altar of the Lord being chased around by hot coals, in Ezekiel eating one of the scrolls of the law of the Lord, Jeremiah buying a field from his uncle, and even a bonus one in Ezekiel where the throne of the Lord is upon wheels. Starting off in the book of Isaiah.
Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. With it he touched my mouth and said, "See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, your sin is atoned for."
This is a really cool image. I just love this idea of an angel flying around the altar of the Lord, chasing after Isaiah with some, hot coals in his hands, trying to burn him. But for someone like Isaiah, those hot coals represented judgment. The coal was taken from the altar of the Lord, upon which a blameless lamb would be sacrificed upon the altar. And part of the meat of that lamb would be then burnt upon the altar to send up an aroma unto heaven that's pleasing unto the Lord. This concept of the animal being burnt up is actually the word Holocaust. And the destruction of the animal was an early form of vicarious atonement, where the punishment that was due for society, for people, was actually falling upon this innocent animal. And within the coal, the animal would be burnt up, signifying the complete destruction that sin would bring about. So when Isaiah looks at this hot coal, he sees judgment. And when the angel starts to bring the coal to him, what he probably was going to imagine was him being burnt up for his own sin or the sins of the people. But in totally flipping the script, God uses this instrument of judgment to be the atonement for Isaiah's sins. Like a cross or a bronze serpent, the instrument of their judgment and destruction becomes the instrument of redemption. Let's look at an example in Ezekiel.
Then he said to me, "Son of man, eat this scroll I am giving you and fill your stomach with it." So I ate it, and it tasted as sweet as honey in my mouth.
The scroll would represent the law, and as people at this time were flagrantly violating the law, the eating of the law would really recognize that you were bringing judgment upon yourself. Famously in John's book of Revelation, he notes how eating of the scroll was bitter.
So I went to the angel and asked him to give me the little scroll. He said to me, "Take it and eat it. It will turn your stomach sour, but in your mouth it will be as sweet as honey." So I took the little scroll from the angel's hand and ate it. It tasted as sweet as honey in my mouth, but when I had eaten it, my stomach turned sour.
If you're ever in a place in your life where someone is reading you laws, it's probably because you've broken them, and it's going to be a pretty bitter experience. Yet instead of the law being a bitter experience, it actually tastes sweet as honey within his mouth. This one's a little bit tough to decipher, but it shows that the law that has been so bitter and so horrible to digest over years is going to become sweet again. People are going to get excited about the laws of God, and a coming promise that God is going to bring about redemption for those condemned under the law. Third example would be Jeremiah buying a field from his uncle.
Once more, fields will be bought in this land, of which you will say, "It is a desolate waste without people or animals, for it has been given into the hands of the Babylonians."
On paper, this would be like a really bad investment, because the land of Israel and Judea were under judgment. Babylon was coming, it was quickly approaching, and it was going to destroy the land. Don't make investment in property that's about to go to war. Really, you're not going to make a whole lot of money on it.
Point. Some things are stupid. This was stupid.
But God said, go ahead, buy it. I want you to spend a ton of money on this thing that you probably don't have. I want you to go and buy this land that is soon going to become worthless. Why? Because God is promising he's going to redeem the land. Even though the people will be sent out from Assyria and Babylon, God was promising he was going to bring them back to the land. He was going to restore this place. He was going to bring redemption unto Israel. One more vision while we're here.
Then the glory of the Lord departed from over the threshold of the temple and stopped above the cherubim. While I watched, the cherubim spread their wings and rose from the ground, and as they went, the wheels went with them. They stopped at the entrance of the east gate of the Lord's house, and the glory of Israel was above them.
We see the throne of God on wheels, which must have been a devastating vision when people saw it, signifying the destruction of the temple, the house of the Lord, the presence of God amongst his people. Seeing the throne on wheels shows God moving away from his promised land and his promised people. A devastating and brutal vision. Yet even if God was leaving, he was following his people. God was breaking out into the nations. God is not a static God who must be confined to his temple, but he is the God of the nations, breaking forth into Assyria, into Babylon, into Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the four corners of the world. Despite a statement of painful judgment, hidden within it is a promise of God's redemption throughout all of the latter prophets. While the judgments of the latter prophets can be very difficult to get through and very difficult reading, hidden within them is God's promise he's going to make everything all right. For those who trust in him, a better day is always coming. God love you all.